guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, multichromes, palettes, blush, highlight, bronzer, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter. And today we are going to be ranking all of the palettes that I own that are in collaboration with somebody, makeup brand X somebody. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me. We're getting into it right now. So this is the third video in this series. I want to thank you guys so much for checking all of them out. If you've already gotten a chance to watch either two, if not, there is a video talking about all of my collab face products, and then a video talking about all of my collab lip and Super Shock products. I had debated about putting kind of those like eye toppery type shades into this ranking, but I just thought it would be too many things. So I chose to put those separate just to kind of make things a little bit easier for me and gives you a little bit more balance between the three videos. So today is palette day. Yes. So we are going to be talking about my favorite thing, which is the eyeshadow palettes. Don't tell the highlighters. Alright, and I don't even know how many I have here. Let's see. Looks like 26. So I have a lot of palettes to go over with you guys. The first one is the Jaclyn Morphe palette. So you might be thinking, wow, Heather, you're starting with the best first. I am starting with the worst first. So on top of the fact that the Jaclyn Morphe palette recently got changed, so the formula sucks now, I look back at this palette now with like my current interest, and I just feel a little disappointed in this one. Like, at the time that I was using it, was using a lot of these kind of like neutral shades. I didn't really gravitate down into these deeper shades, and I definitely didn't gravitate into the colors. You know, perhaps now that I've expanded my horizons a little bit, I might be willing to try it, but I also just feel kind of gross thinking about like Jaclyn Hill and kind of promoting her stuff at this point, just because there's so much drama around her stuff. So I haven't really been reaching for this one, so that is why it makes it to the very bottom. And I will say this is one of the original formula, not the updated formula. So if you have the updated formula, I hear that's much worse quality. So just be aware of that. Okay, coming in at number 25 is the Makeup Revolution, the Emily Edit Wants palette. This is in collaboration with Emily Noel, who I just think is like an adorable little pumpkin. She's super drama-free, very straightforward. She does like her kind of rosy mauve smoky eyes, and so when I bought this palette, I was so excited to support her. I also felt like at the time this was definitely more my color story. Now that I'm doing like a little bit more adventurous colors, I'm not sure that this is necessarily 100% my color story, but I do still really love like this teal, the purples here, this kind of side hustle shade, this kind of like minty shade. I mean, there are some really pretty shades in here still. I can't argue with that. So now that I see it, I'm kind of like, maybe I need to break it out again. The formula is not the best. I mean, it's Makeup Revolution, so it's Makeup Revolution quality. But I think the formula is just okay at best. And I wish it was a little bit nicer. I think that would encourage me to use it more, because the shimmers are just very... Like this one even has some hard pan already. Like, they're okay, they're just not like phenomenal. So I just kind of, I don't know, like the color story pulls me in, but then the quality pulls me away. And probably the most problematic collab that I own is this one. And this is the Makeup Revolution and Alexis Stone palette. So he got in a whole lot of trouble. Well, I wouldn't say whole lot, but he got in a fair amount of trouble due to creating like a conflict with Jamie French, trying to suggest that he had started this trend that she had done, and it was like a whole thing. And so he got in like a big temper tantrum. But before I knew any of that had happened, I had purchased this palette, which is a pigment palette. This is the, what do they call this one? The Instinct palette. And then you have this one called the Transformation palette, which is a palette of toppers. They magnetize to each other, which I think is pretty cool, and probably half the reason I bought the palette in the first place. So you have these kind of like duochrome iridescent toppers, and they go over these shades. I do really like the quality of the pigments here. The only drawback for me is the fact that I think the shades are too similar. So either you only really need like 2 rows of these colors, because I mean, like, look at these 3 grays. do those look different to you? Even in pan, they really don't look different. So how are they going to look different on the eyes? They're probably not. So I think they either needed a stronger gradient between the colors, or they could have made this about half the size. And so for that reason, plus the fact that he's so problematic and dramatic and a hot mess, it gets place number 24. Alright, next up in my collab collection is the color kit from Yes Glitters and Makeup by Abby. A whole bunch of eyes, Abby. And it looks like this. It's a really cute color story. It's got decent quality. The shimmers are pretty nice. They're actually better than the Makeup Revolution shimmers, which is like a low bar, I know. But I do think the colors are pretty. They blend out really nicely. It's just another rainbow palette. So like, did I need it? Probably not. I was really drawn into like this veggie roll shade, this kind of like mossy minty green shade. I thought was super pretty. That's part of why I purchased it. And the fact that originally this palette was like $36, something like that. It's way too expensive for what you're getting. But I do think that, you know, for the sale price, which I got it on, I think it was like $11 or $12, that was a more reasonable price for me. So I'm not upset with my purchase. I just don't think it was 100% necessary in my collection. And because I'm not like super bonded to either the brand or the creator, this kind of floats to the bottom for that reason. The next is one of the palettes from the Coming to America collection. I actually won this collection from Woman Beauty, so I will try to link the video up there where I'm swatching everything for you so you can see what the whole collection looks like. But this palette kind of came towards the bottom. I do really love this blue shade, but I think like so many reds and the black and this purple and the golds here, I mean, it's very like warm toned, and I just don't reach for those shades as much as I reach for the shades in the other parts of this collection. So this one kind of trailed down towards the bottom, but I do think it's a good quality. So if you really enjoy this color story, I don't think you'll be mad with the quality. It's just not my favorite colored story. And this is the Good Morning Zamunda palette, I believe. Alright, next up is the Juvia's Place and Fumi palette. This is the original collab that she did. So she created this kind of like blush and eyeshadow palette. I picked this up originally because I was like, ooh, I don't have a purple blush. And then when I tried to use it as a purple blush, I was like, ooh, there's a reason. It does not look good on me. But I think the colors are pretty. I think they do make nice eyeshadows, and I've used this for a couple of eye looks, but again, it's got lots of like reds and golds, and I don't tend to gravitate towards that for my eye looks, so that's why this one kind of floats towards the bottom. But I do think like the packaging is super cute. I love the whole like vibe of it. So next up, this is the Milani Salt and Pepper Hot Cool Ambitious CD style eyeshadow palette. I really like this palette. So this is, I mean, the quality of these shades is just like phenomenal. Like the actual like intensity of the metallics is there. I think you've got some really nice mattes you can work with. You've got a pop of yellow here. You've got some kind of like berry shades, so you can really make kind of like a smoky kind of berry eyeshadow look. So I do really appreciate that. I love that it's salt and pepper like vibes, and I love that they made it kind of look like a CD. So I really like the aesthetics and everything of this one. It's again not necessarily 100% my color story, which is why it kind of floats its way down to the bottom or towards the bottom. But I do think that it's really cute, so I keep it. I do have a video on this one too. That was one of the first videos I ever put up on my channel. Yikes, if you go watch that one. The next one to talk about, this is the BH Cosmetics in Laviedunprince palette. I think it's like called the, I think it's just called the Laviedunprince palette. But anyway, it's got 12 shades in it. You got kind of a brights rainbow here, and then kind of like these softer neutral shades. This Metamorphosis shade rocks my socks. It's like an orange to gold duochrome. I love that shade. I think it's so pretty. Every time I open this palette, I always want to use that particular shade. The mattes down here are actually pretty vibrant for as inexpensive as this palette was. So I really like it, but again, I'm not super drawn to like this person. This person doesn't, like I don't watch this person or anything. So for me, that part of the collab wasn't as exciting, but I ended up getting this as part of one of the mystery boxes that my aunt and I were exchanging, and I really like the quality of the palette, so I keep it around for that reason. All right, next up is the other mini palette from the Coming to America and Woman Beauty collection. This is the Queen to Be palette, and it looks like this. I love. If I was going to buy anything on my own from this collection, this was the palette I was going to get. I wasn't too worried about the rest of the collection, but this one was the one that I was like the most hyped for. I think that these shades are so nice and vibrant. I love this kind of like smoky white shimmer that they have in here, this bright blue, these pops. I mean, I think this is just an awesome color story. So this one is definitely one that I really enjoy. The last one in that Woman Beauty eye palettes collection is the Royal Heritage palette, and it looks like this. So I put this one just a little bit higher because I think I can get more versatility out of this one than I can out of the Brights palette, because these kind of like rosy pinky purple tones are definitely like right up my alley. These metallics are sickening. They are ridiculous. They're so like creamy and buttery. I have another palette from Woman Beauty that has their Carnival palette, the festival palette, something like that. It's got like greens and burgundies, and the shimmers in the top row of that palette are not soft like this. They're more of like a pressed glitter type sensation when you touch them. They're kind of gritty. So I really love that they switched up the formula for this. I think this is a much nicer quality formula, on top of which this is that classic like pink to gold duochrome type shade, which is my absolute favorite kind of eyeshadow shade. So for me, this one was a huge win. I don't know if you can see this shade right here. That's the shade that I was just swatching it. I mean, it's just got so much metallic intensity. Love this one. Alright, next one is an oldie but a goodie. This is probably one of the first collabs I ever picked up, and this is the Kathleenlights and Colourpop Zodiac collection. So I actually remember watching the launch video for this palette. They did, I think did they do the loose pigments first and then they did the palette, or it might have been vice versa. Anyway, this is what she looks like. Every time I open this palette, I always want to lean into this shade. I also always want to lean into this shade, the Leo, because it's again that orange to gold duochrome. Very, very pretty. I love the black in here. It has a little bit of sparkles, although I don't think that shows up very well on the actual lid. The purpley kind of tones here I think come together and make a really nice kind of soft, smoky, rosy look. You've got some neutrals here, so you can pull in kind of some of these darker shades. The only thing I think is that this blue and this teal don't really have a lot of support with the other colors here, so they get kind of like you can use them together by themselves, but there's not really a full cohesive look you can make using those. So for that, it's kind of frustrating, but I do think this is a really pretty color story, pretty quality, and the packaging is divine. Like this metallic kind of thing that I think Kathleen designed, if I remember correctly. So pretty. Next up is the Colourpop and Disney Villains Misunderstood palette. So I actually picked this up, excuse you, I actually picked this up on Mercari unused because I did not think Colourpop was ever going to restock this palette, and then they did, and I was like, well, that was dumb. But I paid basically the price of the palette for it through Mercari, so it wasn't a huge deal to me either way. I really like this palette. This Diablo shade, the Mongrels shade, Revenge, Jetsam, Facile. These like shimmers look so pretty. There's really not a lot of mattes in here. You get this No Spots shade, Devious, Tragic, Fates, and 101. Everything else is metallics. So I feel like this is a great like topper kind of palette. It's like a companion palette. It's not necessarily like its own standalone palette, I think, for the most part, but I really love this palette. I really feel like I need to get it back out again because it's such an enjoyable palette to work with. Next up is the Disney and Mulan palette. Again, very pretty color story. I love that they did some kind of cooler tone shades in here, like this row especially. This shade here it's almost like a blue-gray to taupe duochrome, and it just looks so pretty on the lids. It's such a like soft, beautiful color. I don't love that they put two pressed glitters in here, so those I tend not to really reach into. Oh, I'm sorry, I think the pressed glitters are here and here. Nope, it's saying just this one actually. So yeah, so I've used everything else in here but this pressed glitter because I don't mess around with the pressed glitters, but I do think it's a pretty color story. Again, it's mostly neutral though, which is why it slides lower in the list, but I really like this one, so I keep it around. Alright, next up is the Wet n Wild Nautical Nonsense palette, which looks like this, and I do have a video of this one on my channel, which is a little more recent, so it's less painful to watch. But this is what this one looks like. I really like this one. I'm not a big Wet n Wild person, or I'm sorry, I like Wet n Wild. I'm not a big SpongeBob person, so for me the SpongeBob part of it didn't draw me in, but I loved the packaging and I loved the actual color story. This green and this green here, I loved this blue, and this shimmer is so like, it's like flaky metallic perfection. So every time I use it, I'm just like, wow, this is an awesome palette. It's good quality. I love that they included a navy in here instead of just like a black, because I feel like that was a little bit more thoughtful than just putting in a black. So for me, I enjoy using this palette. I've taken it on trips with me. Like, I've taken it on trips with me. That should say something. All right, so this is the 12th palette. We're almost to the top 10, and this is the first of the Sydney Grace collection. This is the Radiant Reflection palette. So this is a Sydney Grace and Temptalia trio, which I have all three. This is the deep version of this one. The other two I purchased in the light version. And I did that because this Dearest Constant shade in the other version I just felt like was too pale for me, that I didn't really like it. And I loved this Unstoppable Love shade swatched out in the deeper version than in the lighter version. The metallics here are really, really pretty. I do love all these like rosy neutral shades, but again, I feel like it's not unique. It's not like super special compared to some of the other palettes that I have that have more unique and interesting color stories or lots of fun memories attached to them. So for that reason, it kind of slid towards the bottom, but I do really like this palette, and I think the quality is amazing. So if you were thinking about any of the palettes from this collection, I would definitely consider picking them up because I think they're a really good quality. Alright, and then the number 11 palette is the Colourpop and RawBeautyKristi at Foresight palette. So I really enjoyed this one. I love that you get kind of these like grungy cool tones here. I love the two metallics that they picked. The gold isn't necessarily like my 100% go-to, but I love this kind of green to taupey brown iridescent shade here. Not iridescent, duochrome. I think the mattes that they picked out were really nice. I feel like you can do a lot of really pretty looks with the mattes in this, and then you can bring in other things to kind of top lids off and get it kind of sparkly, like a Super Shock shadow or a Steal a Glitter and Glow, something like that. I love that this palette is predominantly matte so that you can kind of make that really vibrant base and then top it with something else. So this one goes pretty high up on my list for that reason. Alright, you guys, and now we're getting into the top 10. I'm so excited. Yeah, so excited. So number 10 palette is the Makeup Geek and Manny MUA collab, and this is what this one looks like. I think when he did this collab, he got to design like 3 or 4 of the shades, and then the other ones were like already standard shades, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because Beaches and Cream, Frappe, Cosmopolitan, those 3 were already like existing shades. Aphrodite may have been an already existing shades, but the other shades were new. But anyway, so I really love using this palette. I used it for so long when I first I got it the day it released, and I used it pretty much daily for months after that. It was back when I only had just a couple of palettes, and I really, really gravitated to this one even beyond like my chocolate bar palettes. I really liked using this one. This blue brown is amazing. I love this kind of like rose gold type shade here, and I feel like even now these are still so soft, so metallic, so buttery, and this came out in like 2015, 2016, something like that. I mean, it's been out for a while, so I think it's pretty cool that it's still holding up pretty nicely. Very gorgeous packaging. I love this bad boy. Alright, and the next one goes, this is number 9. This is the Colored Raine and Power collab. So Colored Raine is a black-owned makeup brand, and they collabed with the TV show Power from Stars, which is an amazing show. I have not watched the last season, so no spoilers. Thank you very much. But they made this really cool looking palette, and it is basically like a pinky purple palette. So you have this purple iridescent shade up here. You've got a true like electric vibrant purple here, which comes across blue on my camera. I'm not sure why my color balance always does that. You have this really pretty kind of metallic grape shade. You've got some nice mattes here that you can blend everything out with, and then you have this blue to pink duochrome, which you can kind of see there. Yeah, you can definitely see it there. I think this is a really pretty palette. I love the depth that this has. Of course, being a black-owned makeup brand, they're designing things that are going to work on deeper skin tones, so the colors are more vibrant and intense. I love that about their brand. So I really enjoy this palette, and I'm very, very happy with this purchase. Next one to talk about is the Butterfly Kisses palette from Copacetic Cosmetics. Now, this is actually in here because it is technically a collab with the owner's mother. She had done this kind of in inspiration collaboration with her mom who had survived breast cancer, which I think was pretty cool. So I put it in here as well. I love this because it's truly a cool toned purple palette. You don't see very many cool toned purple palettes out on the market. The only thing I don't love is this pressed glitter here in the middle. That is not my jam. I love these kind of shades here. I love this matte smoky gray purple. This flaky shade looks really pretty, like tapped onto the lid. It gives a lot of vibrancy. So for me, I really love 8 of the 9 shades in this palette, which is why it made it so high up in the ranking. Number 7. This is actually a palette I almost forgot about. I was driving home listening to somebody's YouTube video. I can't even remember who I was watching. And they were like, yeah, this palette. And I was like, oh, I didn't even put that in my list when I was like making the ranking. So I had to kind of work this one in. And that is the Jackie Aina palette. And it's funny that I forgot about it considering ABH practically made everybody forget about it by releasing Carly Bible's palette right after it. But anyway, I love this palette. This Zam shade, Shookington, Trust Issues, Dwala's Lituation. This shade is stunning. This it's like a metallic kind of grapey purple brown. Very, very pretty. I love the pigment in these shades. I love the intensity of the metallics. They're really, really vibrant, intense metallics. I think she picked out really good shades to kind of work with these colors because you've got like some pinky purple shades here, and then you've got some brown, so you could really, you know, you could make a very like pinky kind of Natasha Denona Love palette kind of vibes here, or you can make like a very like grungy brown kind of color story here. So I think this palette is really nice. I love the quality. I love the packaging. I mean, my goodness. So yeah, that made it to number 7. Alright, coming in at number 6 is the Pure and RawBeautyKristi palette. I initially did not pick this up because I was like, do I really need a rainbow palette? Nah. And then the more I saw people use it, the more I was like, dang it, I need that palette. So when it started showing up at TJ Maxx, there was a lot more commotion at like Mercari and stuff like that for this palette, and I found one that was new, untouched, in box, and they had it for a reasonable price. I think I paid like $28 for it to be shipped to my house, and the original price for this one was like $36. So I feel like that was, you know, just fine for me. I love the colorful side. This is absolutely a stunning palette. This white is ridiculously vibrant. The blue in here I think is so pretty. The purple is like a true purple. I love that. And then on the more neutral side, I do really like the colors that she picked out, because even though it's truly a neutral palette, I feel like these aren't necessarily the same neutrals you see all of the time. So I'm excited to kind of play with this one at some point. Maybe I'll take it. Oh, I'm gonna need to start packing for the beach soon. So if you guys want to see a video talking about like what makeup I'm gonna include in my bag for the beach, definitely let me know. That's something I could film. But I'm thinking about like maybe taking some stuff like this where it's some neutrals, some colorful shades, so that I have kind of a mix of everything to play with. We're getting into the top 5 and I'm so excited. All of these palettes really just like rock my socks. So number 5 is the Smoky Glow and Midas Cosmetics palette. I love this kind of like glittery packaging, and it's like a glitter paper that is covered, so you don't actually feel any of the glitter. You don't feel any grittiness, and it doesn't come off on your hands or anything like that. I love that. This palette is like a pinky purple dream, let me tell you. And the shade Dofa is probably the like hidden gem of this. Everybody talks about Leno and Nutty as being like their, you know, top shades or whatever, but Dofa is what kills me in this palette. It's my favorite out of this palette. This shade is kind of like a black cherry cranberry kind of a shimmer inside of like a brown pigment. It looks so pretty all over the lid. I have to not use that shade whenever I come into this palette, otherwise every look I do includes that shade. But I really like this palette, and it's really good quality. I'm pretty impressed for this collab. So that was definitely one that, you know, made it into my top 5 for quality, for the people that were involved, color story. It's got it all. Now the next palette that's got it all, Kaleidos Club Nebula. This is the Angelica Nyqvist collab, and it looks like this. It is so pretty, and I'm so sorry, but you can't get your hands on this palette anymore. And I would highly encourage you not to pay like $300 for a palette on Mercari or anything like that, because I don't think you're ever going to feel like it was worth that much money when you pay that much money for a palette. I don't know. That's just my own personal thing. So if I can't get it for around the retail price that would otherwise be charged, I'm not going to do it. But anyway, I really love this palette. I love the shimmers that they picked out, especially these three are so, so pretty. This is like a green to pink duochrome shimmer. This is like a lilac kind of shimmer shade. You've got a blue to lavender iridescent shift here. You've got an iridescent pink here. You've got a pink to kind of an orangey type shade here. And then you've got this kind of like fiery peach shade here. These mattes in this top row especially are some of my favorites. That green is so vibrant and intense. That aqua blue shade here, 7 of 9, is one of my favorite shades to use in the palette because it just shows up so well, so pigmented, and I feel like the looks that I do with that one are just stunners. So for me, this one definitely rose to the top. The brand, the formula, the creator, everything about it, just I'm in love. And I know this one stirred up a lot of controversy, but I really love this palette, so it had to go towards the top. This is the Beauty and Shroud Cosmetics It's Freaking Bats palette. I think they were originally assuming there would be maybe like a couple hundred people putting in an order for this palette, and then they got like 40,000 orders. Like Trend Mood talked about it, everybody went and ordered this palette, and the people that worked at Shroud, or the girl that runs Shroud, had just way more work than she anticipated in this palette. So I'm sure she's honestly like sick of looking at these colors at this point, but I think this color story is so pretty. I love this like really vibrant mossy green. This iridescent like lavender to blue shade is very pretty. I love this kind of murky blue color. You've got this really pretty purple gold duochrome. I love the inclusion of these more unusual mattes. I think this was such a well thought out palette. I think it was a very interesting color story, and you know, everybody always talks about like every palette's already been done, every color story's already been done, but I have never seen a palette look like this. So for me, this was like, okay, unique, different, interesting, check, 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 I'm buying it, and I'm so, so happy I was able to get my hands on it. It took me like I think I had to wait 6 months from the time that I placed my order, which was the day it launched. About 4 or 5 hours after the actual launch, they had like reopened it for orders, and it took me about 6 months to get it. So that tells you something about how much they anticipated demand to be versus how much demand actually was. And then we've got 2 more palettes to talk about. So the next one is the Sydney Grace and Temptalia On the Horizon palette. This is the light one, and it looks like this. I love these colors. Oh my goodness. This navy and this flying high shade with Heart Dog, these like this quad looks so beautiful together on the eyes. I love that you have kind of this like pinky green moment that you can kind of fall into very easily. This Infinite Echo shade looks so pretty smoked out onto the lids. I really, really love it. Lunar Illumination looks super pretty. I mean, my gosh, the entire palette looks super pretty. That's why I keep like raving about it. That's why I made it to number 2. But I just think it is such a pretty, pretty color story. I definitely need to play with these more. I've been putting these to the side so that I could get all these videos filmed that I'm referencing these palettes in, and every time I'm like, I want to go dig that palette out and use it, and then I'm like, no, if I dig it out, I'll forget to put it back, and then it'll be a whole thing. So I'm so glad I'm finally filming these videos so that I can actually like get some more use out of these palettes because they are stunning. And then my number 1 collab palette is the Sydney Grace and Temptalia Quintessence palette, and it looks like this. Oh my gosh, it is so pretty. This shade, it's like a pink to almost a green to a taupey kind of duochrome, multi-chrome type shade. I think it's technically a duochrome, but it almost gives me multi-chrome vibes. I love these 2 like really light grays here. This Serious Starlight looks very, very pretty. I love that they included a black. This vibrant like purpley blue shade is so intense. I need to get some more use out of this palette. I really, really enjoy using it. Every time I use it, I have a hard time not just like dipping into this one every single time. So I definitely want to use it some more and kind of get a little bit more like variation out of the shades. But this palette made it all the way to the top for good reason. This is an excellent collab palette. And with that being said, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you made it through this whole video, props to you. You are the MVP of the day. I want to thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I'll catch you in my next video.